At last, a cycling podcast with a difference. So you have the measure of your bike and all the technical gear for the ride. You have the data to scrutinise and share. But what about you and your levels of fitness? Are you overtraining? Have you an underlying infection? How can you really test, measure and monitor your levels of fitness and performance over time? I'm Dave Clark. Join me on my journey with some of the leisure cyclists and semi-pros as we take the ABELsport test from Knight Scientific to measure the fitness levels of those attending the Plymouth Cycle Network, hosted by Nash & Co solicitors. We'll meet some of the cyclists and find out more about the event, and we'll pick up a little insight into the world of electric bikes on the way. Let's kick off with Anthony from Knight Scientific.
My name's Anthony Wynn and I work for Knight Scientific Limited, which is a biotech company in Plymouth. I used to be an athlete when I was younger, and like many people I was looking for something to do to keep me fit, and actually a friend of mine who was already into cycling came down and roped me into doing a 100-mile cycle ride and gave me his old bike and convinced me to do it probably about 5 years ago. And since then I haven't looked back. I've got an old carbon Giant TCR. It's great for me. It just fits me well, actually. It's probably the best thing about it. I've actually only been with Knight Scientific for about 2 months now, and before that I was a research biochemist working in the labs. I used to work on mitochondria and the biochemistry of energy efficiency in the mitochondria. Now with Knight Scientific I'm really enjoying using the same knowledge, but testing people and being able to give them results straight away rather than it taking years to filter through the scientific research system. We do a test called the ABELsport test, which, to put it in its most basic term, it gives you a way to quantify your immune system and your current status of your immune system's ability to attack an infection. It will tell you if you're inflamed, if you've got an infection at the moment, which you may not have symptoms for, but if you've got one coming. It would also measure your level of fatigue, because your white blood cells basically track up and down with your level of fatigue. We see what's called an oxidative burst from the white blood cells, which is how they attack an infection or break down damaged tissue, and we basically artificially stimulate them. They produce this oxidative burst, and we see how strong a burst they're able to produce. So you can really tell if you're fatigued. You can see that response drop off dramatically, and if you do several training sessions in a row, you can see how much it comes down. And basically, many people have been there where they've pushed it too hard, and then you get the sore throat or the infection comes along and you know you pushed it too hard. But using this test, you can basically stop before you get to that point. You can measure your load and manage it through that.
So really interesting stuff from Anthony. Let's just have a look at their website. Knight Scientific ABELsport test, a single drop of blood to determine whether a person is in danger of overtraining or suffering from an infection, being used by Premier League football teams, Olympians, triathletes, Ironman competitors in the UK and Europe and around the world, really. So sounds pretty good. Let's just take this idea to some of the cyclists at the event and see what they have to say.
My name is Hannah Worth. I'm one of the directors at Active Devon. We're a not-for-profit organisation inspiring and supporting people to lead active lifestyles. I started cycling properly in 2012. I was inspired by the Olympics and our work. I was working for West Devon Borough Council then. They did the Cycle to Work scheme, and I wanted to enter a try, so I thought I'd better buy a bike then. My now husband was a cyclist, and I pretended that I really liked cycling to go out on a cycle with him and then go on a date. That was my route in, pretend you like cycling to get a boyfriend.
So Knight Scientific have got this ABELsport test. Is that something you'd be interested in?
Absolutely, I would love to be part of something like that. I was saying to Anthony that I studied human biology, human health and exercise at university years ago. I never really feel like I've used that learning, so this area kind of interests me personally anyway. And I do, as I said, I do a bit of triathlon and stuff, so I'd be really up for that.
Tell me about the kind of bike, because I know people who want to get into cycling, sometimes they worry about the kind of bike they've got and the equipment rather than anything else.
So I've got quite an old, because I bought it in 2012, a Giant carbon frame. I think it's a Giant Avail, I am looking to upgrade my bike. I think what's really important from my perspective, being a 5'2" female, is that when we go to buy bikes as a female, that we don't get overbiked.
Right.
I think the reach is really important. And I used to suffer from a bit of a sore neck, and I've bought a shorter stem on my bike now. So for me, the fit is really important, and that's the first thing I'll be looking for. And also in terms of whether it's good value for money for the sort of group set that you get, and whether it looks nice. Those are important factors for me as well.
Peter Dadge at Puffing Billy at Rangerton, he's recently seen a surge in both technology and the demand for electric bikes.
I think there is a lot of need for electric bikes here in Devon. We live in a really hilly county, and this is where it kind of links into our work professionally. There needs to be more evidence around the health and well-being impacts of using electric bikes. So some of the studies that have been done are indicating that there are really strong health and well-being benefits. Because we work with health around social prescribing and actually prescribing cycling for people that have got long-term conditions. And I think where electric bikes come in terms of that market is for older people. Yeah. But then some of the kickback that we've had from clinicians is, are they working hard enough to have their health and wellbeing impacts? So pilot studies are saying yes, and there's the broader impacts of the kind of mental wellbeing and being out in the fresh air as well. So I think there is a significant need for electric bikes for older people. Our kind of understanding is that we've got key opportunities to change people's behaviour at key transition points in people's lives. So retirement transitions is a priority audience for us in terms of helping people to increase their daily activity levels. So electric bikes interest us in that space.
So excellent news from Hannah from Active Devon. Looks like she'll be up for a test or two, and we'll follow that in due course. And really interesting what she was saying about electric bikes as well. Now, I mentioned Peter Dadge, he's over at Rangerton, Puffing Billy Cycles. He's seen a huge increase in interest and sales of electric bikes. And I thought maybe it would be a little bit controversial, but it seems to be going down really well. There were loads of people at the old Nash event there who were very positive. So before we carry on with this podcast, let's just go back to Anthony and see what he has to say about the subject.
I think they're fantastic, actually. So, because it gets people out on a bike who wouldn't normally go out on a bike. So, especially living down here in Plymouth, where you've got the entry to cycling is inhibited by the hills, basically. So, it takes quite a long period of time for people to get used to riding up the steep hills we've got around here. So, an electric bike gets people over that. The other thing I like about them is they're fixed at 16 mile an hour. And it's fantastic when you come to a big hill and you've got an electric bike in front of you, you can just tuck in behind one and be fully up the hill.
So if you see an electric bike, tuck behind it. Now, we're going to get the tests done in subsequent podcasts, but before we do that, we just need to line up a couple of ducks. So we're going to talk to Colin about his views, and we're going to talk briefly with Ellen about the Plymouth Cycle Network, how it all started, what it's all about, and how you can find out more and join in. And if you do join in, of course, then there's a very good chance that you too can take part in the ABELsport test. Let's quickly hear from Colin and Ellen before we close.
My name's Colin Watts, and I'm a director of WPS Insurance Brokers. I really got into running in the 90s, about 20 years ago, and doing half marathons, and there was just something about running that didn't quite work for me, and my wife bought me a very nice bike. I haven't tried an electric bike, but I can see a time when I probably will need one. And I think they've opened up cycling for people who perhaps wouldn't have felt very competent at cycling, and especially in this part of the world. I went to a talk the other week, a guy called Mark Beaumont, who was the guy who cycled around the world in 80 days. And he was saying he cycled in Devon and Cornwall, and the amount of elevation in going up and down was as high in Devon and Cornwall as anywhere else he cycled in the world.
So there's a chap here, Anthony, who works for Knight Scientific, and they've got this finger prick blood test, which is a measure of fitness, and it helps detect infections. Uh-huh. Is that something you'd be interested to have a go at?
I'm open-minded about it. Yeah. I wouldn't have a problem with that.
Because it will tell we can measure levels of fitness now, and then compare those next month, the month after, and so on, and see how it all goes.
I don't have a problem. Yeah.
So apart from the talk about the Devon Hills and the benefits of electric bikes, we've got 2 guinea pigs, Hannah and Colin, who are going to take the ABELsport test. And I'm going to just catch up very quickly with Anthony to see the kind of conversations that he's been having too. And don't forget, if you want to take part in the NASH event, the Plymouth Cycle Network, Ellen Yates is going to be giving us the details about where you can find out all of that information. So just a quick word from Anthony.
It's been good, I think. Yeah, the people I've spoken to are interested in it. Obviously, they're all different. They want to use it in different ways. Some people would like to do, say, a weekly test. Other people would want to do a study period, maybe where they're going to use it every day for a week and ramp up the training load and see what training load gets a response, starts to suppress the immune system. Another thing you can do is you can bracket a training session, so you can do the test, do a training session, which usually produces some inflammation, and you get a heightened response after the training session. But we know from past case studies that if you don't get that heightened response, that shows your body's recovery capacity is diminished. So some people can come in and do it before and after, basically, as a measure of their recovery ability as well.
So I reckon that just about wraps it up. We've got 2 people to take part in the ABELsport test, and the invitation is out there to get more people involved. Just let me know if you'd like to do that. Follow the links on this page. A final word from Ellen about the event itself.
With us at NASH, really love cycling, and I think you've really got to try and do something in business that you enjoy doing personally. So we decided that we'd seen other bigger firms do similar clubs, but we thought we'd try and do it a little bit different at NASH and involve the Nuffield to help us as a base for our cycle. And as you can see, they give us lovely hospitality, and it's a good place to start to go on the open moor and just to have a beautiful cycling network today. I mean, we get some people that come back time and again, which is absolutely great, and they're familiar with the routes that we choose. But there's also new people that are interested, and I think it's gathering momentum. We use LinkedIn, and we try to encourage everybody to use social media to sort of put the word out there. Or you can go to the NASH website, which has got several pages all about the cycle network and how you can get involved.
So if you'd like to find out more, just Google Plymouth Cycle Network, and you can contact me. My name's Dave Clark. I am the How. This podcast has been made possible by Peter Dadge at Puffing Billy Cycles at Rangerton. This is a How production. Please share and subscribe.